The media networks didn't do us any favors by missing the reason why Donald Trump became our president in the first place.
Tell me what I did, please.
If you turn on cable network news today, you would think he's our president because of some combination of Russia, racism, Facebook, Hillary Clinton, and emails all mixed together.
I'm the first person to ever get impeached, and there's no crime.
I want a billionaire to pay enough to cover tuition for all of our kids.
As president, would you be willing to sacrifice some of that growth?
The answer is yes.
When Speaker Pelosi suggested that House Democrats may be too afraid to even transmit their shoddy work product to the Senate.
Any other questions? Because I'm not going to answer any more questions on this.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to this Friday before Christmas edition of Focal Point, live on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent.
As always.
In this Christmas season, and there is our effervescent, as always, producer Jeff Reed. We're giving Rob the day off. He's getting into the Christmas spirit just a little bit early.
Yeah,
and by the way,
checked with me about a half hour ago.
What, just to rub it in that we're here working and he's not? Is that the deal?
No, I mean, I wasn't so effervescent.
Oh, okay. So your mood's improving a little bit?
Oh, yeah. It's
all right.
getting better.
Okay, well, let's just jump right into it. I want to mention you can go to afr.net and get podcasts for every program. We upload it right after the program is over. We publish it with a table of contents. You can find your way around the program. So go to afr.net, click on the podcast button. You can scroll down and get any program. I mean, they're right in sequence, any program that we've done with the table of contents there to help you find your way around. That's afr.net for the podcast. Encourage you to go there. Also have a daily feature called the Life and Liberty Minute. We have podcasts. It's a 60-second podcast, so it'll take you 1 minute to listen to it. It's on a item of interest to the day. You can go there and get the same thing. And also at afa.net, we have our columns. That's our opinion page called The Stand. I've got a column up that just went up about this sanctuary movement and why this is a sanctuary movement we can all get behind. Remember the illegal alien sanctuary movement? We are not down with that because that's a movement, the sanctuary movement, intended to flout the Constitution. But the Second Amendment sanctuary movement intends to uphold the Constitution. They got 95 counties in Virginia. 86 of them now have declared that their counties are officially sanctuary counties. They are not going to cooperate with gun control laws that come down from the state government. Good for them. And I want to turn our attention to the Word of God as we begin the program today. We're in the book of Exodus. I was just getting a note from my son that on Monday night our whole family went out to Five Guys Burgers. JD's wife, her mother was in town for a Christmas holiday, so we all went to Five Guys Burgers. And my grandson, he's about 4 years old. So we got to Five Guys Burgers. We ordered, and then JD and me and my grandson, we sat at what we called the man table. It was an elevated table when we called it the man table. And we invited my grandson to come up and sit at the man table. And so he did, and that was kind of the theme. I just got a text from JD. They're shopping at Costco. And he wanted me to know that he and my other two grandsons, one of the grandsons wasn't there. He was sitting at the regular people table, but they were sitting at the man table today at Costco. So it is a happening thing. Now, in Exodus 3 and 4, there's so much content in Exodus 3 and 4. We're only going to be able to scratch just the very surface of it, but I want to talk briefly about a very famous event in the Scriptures found in the first paragraph of Exodus chapter 3. Remember, Moses is keeping the flock for his father-in-law Jethro on the backside of the wilderness, the backside of the desert. So, sometimes we think we are so stranded, we are so isolated that I'm just kind of completely out of touch with God and everything that's going on. God can manifest himself to us anywhere at any time. He can manifest himself to us in a place where there's absolutely nothing going on, absolutely nobody else around, on the backside of the desert. That's where Moses met with God. And he did it in the form of a bush. The angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. This is probably a blackberry bush, just an ordinary thorn bush out there. He looked, Moses did, and behold, the bush was burning, and yet it was not consumed. He'd never seen anything like this before in his life. A burning bush that didn't burn up, it just burned. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, God called him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, here I am. And then in chapter 4, remember, after God reveals his name to Moses, my name is Yahweh. If the elders of Israel ask you who sent you, you tell them that I am sent you. God's name. You want to know what God's name is? It is Yahweh. That's from the Hebrew verb to be. I am who I am. I will be what I will be. That's God's name. I am has sent me to you. So anyway, the great I am, God revealing his name to Moses, hadn't done that before this. You know, Moses went back in the accounts that he'd already written, and he put God's name is. When he discovered what God's name was, he went back and put it in some of the earlier accounts, but we didn't know what God's name was until this event. So if you want to address God by name, the way you do it is to refer to him as Yahweh. So Yahweh is the one speaking to Moses from a burning bush, and the Lord saw that he turned aside. God called to him, said, Moses, he said, here I am. Then in chapter 4, God calls him to go rebuke Pharaoh, and Moses says, send Aaron. So here he says, here am I. Chapter 4, he says, here am I, send Aaron to go do this task. And then God says to him, take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. Lesson here is that anywhere God is, that is holy ground. You want to know what holy ground is? It's anywhere that God is manifesting his presence, anywhere where he is. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Now here's what the application I want to make from this, and then we will go to prayer here in just a quick second. You know, Moses was astonished at the sight of this bush. It was burning with flame, yet it was not consumed. Now, he thought at first that there was something special about the bush. What is it about this bush that makes it special? Then God spoke to him, and Moses realized that the secret was not found in the bush, but in the God who inhabited the bush. Moses realized, look, this is just an ordinary bush, but it becomes something extraordinary when God manifested his presence through it. So there was a lesson for Moses and for us in this. Even though he was an ordinary man with a stutter, when God filled him with his presence, he could liberate a nation from bondage and become the greatest lawgiver in human history. And it's still true today. When God takes up residence in us, ordinary people, by the power of the indwelling life of Christ, he can do extraordinary things through us. So we may be completely ordinary, but as Moses discovered, when God is at work, any old bush will do. Well, let's go to prayer. Sovereign Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I pray for myself this day, for my family. I pray for the listening audience of Focal Point, every man, woman, and child within the sound of my voice. I pray for us when we feel as though we are on the far side of the desert, removed from a place of visibility and influence and service. I ask you to reveal yourself to us and even call us by name. Please draw us into your holy presence, teach us to worship you, and restore us to an active place of service. I pray that you will see our misery and hear us when we cry out to you. I pray that you will see our oppression and bondage and be concerned about our suffering. May our cry reach you, and may you come down to rescue us by bringing us out of the place of suffering into a good and spacious place. I pray that you will commission each of us to do something challenging for you in work or in ministry. When we doubt, please assure us that you will be with us, that you are the great I am, and that you will be whatever we need. I pray that you will stretch out your mighty hand to enable us to carry out the tasks that you have assigned to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, it's Christmas season, and Jeff, we're going to jump right into the Read Report early today.
Okay.
It's Christmas season, and I think Jeff has been working on a little poem, and this is a poem that could wind up, I've got a book of 101 famous poems. This is going to be poem number 102. So, okay. Jeff, share with us your poetic laureate skills here.
Well, I just kind of was throwing this together and didn't have time to work on it today, so it's a little rough, but it was inspired by this week's foolishness du jour. Okay, it goes, 'twas the week before Christmas, and all through the House, speaking of the House of Representatives, and all through the House, articles of impeachment were read by a louse. The media was drooling over the predetermined ruling, even though they knew America was booing. The articles were wrote by Nadler with care, in hopes that all the votes would soon be there. Schiff twisted the facts with all of his might. Meanwhile, the truth was nowhere in sight. Republican demands were met with a hush. Dems said, "You must not be heard, we're in such a rush." Not one Republican on the floor was biting, not even a bit, for most people know that this wasn't legit. But to Democrat eyes then did appear the American people with constitutions they hold dear. We know why you had to give this a try. Your presidential hopes in 2020 will die. "I'm still your president," Trump said with a grin. "We'll see you in November, and again I will win."
Okay, and I've asked Jeff to put that up on the Focal Point Facebook page, and we're going to send that to the Pulitzer Prize people for literature. That's going in. That's the submission. Anyway, if you want to read that thing, go to the Focal Point Facebook page. Whenever Jeff gets a chance to put it up, you can read it there. All right, we're going to go to Open Line, or Free for All Friday, rather, but I want to limit it today. Usually it's just I'll let you set the table, talk about anything you want. This day, the conversation is going to be restricted. Now that the articles of impeachment have been voted on by the House but have not been delivered to the Senate, what do you want Mitch McConnell to do? What do you want him to do? I've suggested that what he ought to do, and other people are saying the same thing. In fact, I've got a column here by Noah Feldman, who is a Democrat attorney. He is a professor of law at Harvard University. So this is not some kind of flaming right-winger writing this. He says that President Trump has not yet been impeached. He hasn't even been impeached constitutionally. Here's what he says. Now that the House of Representatives has voted to impeach President Trump, what is the constitutional status of the two articles of impeachment? Must they be transmitted to the Senate to trigger a trial, or could they be held back by the House until the Senate decides what the trial will look like, as Speaker Nancy Pelosi has hired? The Constitution doesn't say how fast the articles must go to the Senate. Some modest delay is not inconsistent. That's usually how both chambers work. But an indefinite delay would pose a serious problem. Impeachment, as contemplated by the Constitution, does not consist merely of the vote of the House, but of the process of sending the articles to the Senate for trial. Both parts are necessary to make an impeachment under the Constitution. The House must actually send the articles and send managers to the Senate to prosecute the impeachment, and the Senate must actually hold a trial. Otherwise, the president is not even impeached. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Harvard law professor. You can say this to your friends over the weekend. Donald Trump has yet to be impeached. He is not an impeached president because until those articles are delivered to the Senate, the impeachment is not official. See how your friends take that. We'll be right back. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Yep. Gay and lesbian activists, along with their bisexual allies, are about to face hostile opposition. Not from those pesky evangelicals.
Radio.
Howdy, welcome to Focal Point, this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point. Not exactly free-for-all Friday today. I would like to hear from you. What do you want Mitch McConnell to do? You know, I've suggested that he just, if these charges ever get there, that they be dismissed with extreme prejudice. Just introduce them when they come over from the House, present them to the Senate. Do you guys want us to conduct a trial on this mess, or do you want us just to dismiss these charges? Prosecutors ask for judges, or defendants ask for judges to do that all the time. And a judge will look at the indictment, and he can come to the conclusion, look, there is nothing here. There is no reason to go through the expense and the aggravation of a trial. I am dismissing these charges, and if the judge dismisses them with extreme prejudice, it means they cannot be filed again. That's what I think Mitch McConnell ought to do. Just receive them, have an up or down vote right now. Do we even mess with these, or do we dismiss these charges with extreme prejudice? I want to know what you think ought to happen here. So we'll see how all of that turns out. Noah Feldman, Harvard law professor, says that the president hasn't even been impeached yet. The president isn't impeached until the articles actually show up in the United States Senate. All right, here is your catastrophic global warming alert for the day. Iceland has an immigration center, that's EM, I guess for people who are leaving the country, immigration center in North Iceland, and that thing is under 30 feet of snow. They can't even get to the front door of the immigration center because they've had so much snow. the director of the Immigration Center, we've never before had snow on this scale, 30 feet. And also NASA has released their analysis that we are headed into solar cycle 25, that solar cycle will be the weakest in 200 years. And NASA has correlated previous solar minimums when the sun is basically shut down, there's no sunspot activity. These are correlated with prolonged periods of global cooling. Remember the Maunder minimum. That was responsible for the Little Ice Age back in the 17th and the 18th century. Well, we've got a trough just about that deep with the sun. And we've been talking about this for years. Russian astronomers have been telling us for years, and I've been telling you for years, look, we could be headed into a prolonged period of global cooling. And this time it would be based on science and not on pure conjecture. You might have heard all those accusations that the cadets at the Army-Navy game were flashing the white power sign, making the little circle with their finger with the three fingers splayed out. Well, they researched it and found out, no. What they were doing is they were playing a game. I talked to my son about this. I was talking with him about this last week, and he said, man, that's a game we used to play on the playground where you would make an O, like we used for the OK sign, and you would splay your fingers out on your pants, and if you could get somebody on the playground to look at the hole that you had made with their thumb and forefinger, you got to hit them. So it was the circle game. And so these researchers, I don't know how much money they spent doing this, but no white power signals. They were playing a game that kids used to play on the playground in elementary school. Now here's something to get you in the Christmas spirit. Here's a guy in the UK, and he ordered an inflatable Santa on eBay. And he thought it was an 8-foot tall Santa. So he started inflating it, and it kept inflating and inflating and inflating, and it would not stop. Wound up being 25 feet tall. So he has got an inflatable Santa on his front yard that's taller than the roof of his house. Wow. So the neighbors are loving it. They're in his direction. He's finally deflated it until Christmas Eve, I guess, and he's going to re-inflate it. But he said this, when I woke up in the morning, I looked out and his head would eclipse the window. I couldn't see what was outside because Santa's head was in the window. And then if you're downstairs in the living room, you open the curtains and there is Santa's fanny staring you right in the face. So he says, look, this is not working. So he deflated it, going to reinflate it for the Christmas season. So that is our holiday cheer for today. Now, I want to mention this before we get to some sound bites and weave it in with your phone calls. Christianity Today, which was founded by Billy Graham in 1956, came out today, and I've got a column that'll be going up. I encourage you to come back to afa.net over the weekend and look for this thing, because I think it's pretty important to read. But Christianity Today, founded by Billy Graham. By the way, Franklin Graham came out today and said, my father, Billy Graham, the guy that founded Christianity Today, was a Trump supporter. He knew Donald Trump. He believed in Donald Trump. He voted for Donald Trump. As Franklin Graham said, he believed that Donald J. Trump was the man for this hour in history for our nation. Christianity Today said this guy needs to be dumped. He needs to be removed from office. Here are some of the things that Christianity Today said about him in this editorial. That what he did on the phone with the president of Ukraine was a violation of the Constitution, quote, end quote, was, quote, profoundly immoral. He has, quote, dumbed down the idea of morality. Quote, he is morally lost and confused. Quote, he has abused his authority for personal gain and betrayed his constitutional oath. Quote, he is a leader of grossly immoral character with, quote, numerous moral deficiencies and a, quote, bent and broken character. And they say loyalty to the creator of the Ten Commandments requires us to insist that, quote, Trump should be removed from office. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I do not want this guy, the chief editor of Christianity, writing my obituary. I will tell you that right now. So you get done with reading Galley's editorial, you think that Donald Trump is the Antichrist, not just a flawed human being, but evil incarnate. Now, this guy is getting a lot of attention. The media, he already got a national interview this morning on national TV. Anybody that dumps all over Trump, any Christian, any self-identified Christian who dumps on Trump, any self-identified Christian that dumps on evangelicals who support Trump can be guaranteed his 4 minutes of fame on national TV, and Mark Galley has already had his. But the point I make in the column, and I'll make it right now and then we'll move on, is Christianity today is not Billy Graham's Christianity today. He founded this thing in 1956. It is a much different magazine today than it was when Billy Graham founded it. But Mark Galley wraps himself in the mantle of Billy Graham, starts his piece by talking about the fact, first words out of his mouth is that Billy Graham is the founder of Christianity today. You know, and I say in the column, you know, he goes after Trump on this phone call with the president of Ukraine, and it was wrong and profoundly immoral, violated his constitution. And he says the creator of the Ten Commandments commands me to call for his removal. And I would say, well, you told lies about Donald Trump there. You said that what he did was unconstitutional. It wasn't. The Constitution and the law of the United States requires him to certify that any nation that's going to get taxpayer money is dealing with the issue of corruption. So Donald Trump had a legal and constitutional obligation to probe corruption with the president of Ukraine before he released $1 of taxpayer money. So that wasn't about an election opponent. That was about corruption. He was right to do it. The treaty that we have with Ukraine that was signed by Bill Clinton compels Ukraine, I mean, they signed on it, they've obligated themselves to cooperate with the United States in criminal investigations. So when Donald Trump was asking them, would you do us a favor? That wasn't me. Will you do me a favor? It was, will you do us a favor and look into this issue of corruption, because we're concerned about it, as he had a legal obligation to be concerned about corruption. So, we can't go around giving corruption passes to people who are candidates for public office. You can't do that. So it didn't matter who was running for office. Donald Trump still had an obligation, a legal, statutory, constitutional obligation to ask Ukraine to look into it. And so my point is, look, to my response to Christianity today is the creator of the Ten Commandments compels me to call you out for bearing false witness against the President of the United States. All right, we're going to take calls on what you think Mitch McConnell should do with these articles of impeachment. Let's play a couple of sound bites before we jump in to that, kind of whet your appetite for a discussion about these issues. Let's start with Nancy Pelosi. This is clip 1. And I don't know if there's a UN translator around somewhere that we can call in to try to help us understand what in the world Nancy Pelosi is even saying here. Is there a translator in the House? Clip 1.
When we bring the bill, which is, just so you know, there's a bill made in order by the Rules Committee that we can call up at any time in order to send it over to the Senate and to have the provisions in there to pay for the impeachment, and then the next step, the whatever you want to call it, the trial.
Wow.
That is where you put the managers. I was not prepared to put the managers in that bill yet because we don't know the arena that we are in.
Nancy, we don't know what language you're in. We don't know what continent you're in. All right, clip number 2. This is from the Democratic...
I think she was trying real hard not to say this is all the Republicans' fault.
These are some highlights from the Democratic debate last night. Here is Joe Biden talking about what he's willing to do. He says in front of God and everybody what he's willing to do with your job to save the earth. Clip 2.
As president, would you be willing to sacrifice some of that growth, even knowing potentially that it could displace thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of blue-collar workers in the interest of transitioning to that greener economy?
The answer is yes.
Sure.
The answer is yes.
I'll sacrifice your job in a heartbeat. I'm not going to give up my job. Are you crazy? But I'm going to give up your job. Be glad to do it to save the planet. Here's Andrew Yang, clip number 3. This is the Democrat. He comes the closest of anybody in the field to making any kind of a sense. He's got absolutely no shot. But he's talking last night to his competitors on the stage about why Donald Trump won and what the talking snake media has been missing all through this deal. Clip 3.
It's clear why Americans can't agree on impeachment. We're getting our news from different sources, and it's making it hard for us even to agree on basic facts. Congressional approval rating last I checked was something like 17%, and Americans don't trust the media networks to tell them the truth. The media networks didn't do us any favors by missing the reason why Donald Trump became our president in the first place. If you turn on cable network news today, you would think he's our president because of some combination of Russia, racism, Facebook, Hillary Clinton, and emails all mixed together. But Americans around the country know different. We blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs that were primarily based in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri. I just left Iowa. We blasted 40,000 manufacturing jobs there. The more we act like Donald Trump is the cause of all of our problems, the more Americans lose trust that we can actually see what's going on in our communities and solve those problems.
All right, so that's Andrew Yang. Look, it's about the economy. That's how Trump won. He promised jobs. He's delivered jobs. Andrew Yang says, look, we're not getting it because we're listening to the talking snake media. All right, last clip on the debate last night. This is Elizabeth Warren, the wacky, wavy, arm-flailing, inflatable Cherokee tube woman who wants to be your president. And here is her view. I mean, this is classic socialism. This is unadorned socialism. This isn't liberalism even trying to paint itself as something other than socialism. Let's listen. Clip 4.
The mayor wants billionaires to pay one tuition for their own kids. I want a billionaire to pay enough to cover tuition for all of our kids, because that's how we build a future.
And they loved it. They were clapping for that. So she wants billionaires to pay for everything. Now, we've talked about this before, but the problem with socialism, which is what this is that eventually you run out of other people's money. But that's not stopping Elizabeth Warren. She's supposed to be the smartest woman at the table, and she has no idea what she is talking about. Now, we've mentioned this before. You could take all the wealth, all of the wealth, every last bit of it, and you could confiscate it, every last penny of wealth that belongs to the Forbes 400, the richest 400 people in America. You could confiscate their wealth down to the last penny. You could sell their houses and pocket the money. You could confiscate their retirement plans, their 401ks, their IRAs, and all that. You put it all together. You couldn't even run the federal government for 1 year on all of the confiscated wealth of the billionaires in America, and then you would be out of resources. You would have no assets. They would be out of work. They'd be out of money. They'd be out of jobs, so they couldn't support any of the government programs that you want. So that's these are the people that want to be your next president. It's just kind of spooky when you think about it. All right, one last clip, and then we'll take calls in the last segment. Here's a Donald Trump clip 5, and what he is saying here is absolutely true. Let's listen.
This is the first impeachment where there's no crime. I say, tell me what I did, please. Well, we don't know. You violated the Constitution. You had Turley, who's smart, Alan Dershowitz, these guys, all of them. They say there's no crime. There's no crime, right? There's no crime. I'm the first person to ever get impeached, and there's no crime.
You know, I got a story from New Jersey, a paper in New Jersey. Right here it is. This is what bribery looks like. They were trying to run him up for bribery. Here are 5 elected officials who got envelopes and paper bags filled with cash, coffee cups stuffed with cash so they could send city and county business to the attorney of their choice. That's a bribe. Donald Trump, nobody's ever accused him of taking a dime from anybody. Be right back.
Here's Twyla Brace.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, your congenial host as always. Want to save a little bit of time. I'd like to do a little bit of exposition on the original poem, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. There's some things in there. I'm sure you've read that poem, you've listened to it, and you read right over a lot of the most important stuff that's in that little poem. So we'll save a little bit of time at the end of the hour to do that. Let's start.
Mine wasn't good enough?
No, yours is going to get the Pulitzer Prize.
Oh,
I'm just going to get a little bit of airtime on my own radio program.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, let's go to Charles in Findlay, Ohio. Number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Make your comments as concise as you can so we can get as many calls in as possible. Charles, what's on your mind from Findlay, Ohio?
Hey, Brian, thank you. So I would like to see the quick option unless the longer option means some Democrats who are responsible for this see some jail time. That's unlikely to happen, though. You know that.
Yeah.
Real quick, though, the other thing that I never hear anybody say is I feel like this is win-win for the Democrats because either he gets impeached, which is probably not going to happen, or they have used the word Constitution so many times these last 2 weeks, and more times than I've heard them say in 10 years. If he doesn't get impeached, then they're going to say, okay, the Republicans don't care about the Constitution. Let's slowly start dismantling it.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
All right, Charles. Well, that is definitely a possibility, although I think that the American people are just not going to put up with this for much longer. I think they're going to get impatient, and they're going to get restless. The natives are going to get restless, and not even the Democrats are going to be able to ignore it. The people are not going to be happy with them. I mean, even Democrats, a lot of Democrats, let's get this over with. We're tired of messing with this. Even Nancy Pelosi is tired of messing with this. She was at a press conference yesterday, and she refused to take any questions on impeachment. So I want to talk about tariffs. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. I do not want to talk about impeachment. Even she knows that that whole thing is a loser. All right, Gail in Dyersburg, Tennessee. Welcome, Gail. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
All that belong to the country of the sane, to the country of the sane people that are left. Yes, we the people. I know that Senator needs to go to the well of the Senate and declare this whole thing an extreme farce with reasons why, and start naming names in his speech of everything that has gone on. I know that we are all seeking punishment for these people, but, we are to pray for our enemies. There has been a quid pro quo going on in all of this for the Democrats. They have sold their soul to the devil for power. That's your quid pro quo.
All right, Gail, listen.
And I want him...
You want him to dismiss these charges right away?
Yeah, with extreme prejudice, because you can't hold a trial if you don't have any charges.
Yeah. All right, Gail, listen, I appreciate the call. I agree with you, and I think there is going to be punishment. I think the punishment is going to be administered on the first Tuesday in November of 2020, and I think the Democrats are going to get all the discipline and the punishment that they can handle. All right, let's grab a call from Mickey in Midland, Texas. Mickey, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, Brian, I agree with you. They should just dismiss it with extreme prejudice. But while I was listening to you, I had an epiphany.
All right.
Is it possible for the American people to file a lawsuit against the DNC for this whole farce, wasting our taxpayer dollars and everything like that? And also, there was an episode on MASH where they tied a toe tag to Frank Burns, and I think this describes the Democrats perfectly. It's emotionally exhausted and morally bankrupt.
And lifeless. All right, Mickey, listen, I appreciate your call. Probably no way to sue the DNC for something like that, even though they deserve it. You can sue people for anybody for anything anymore, but that would be a stretch. And I think they're going to get all of the discipline and the rebuke that they can handle next November. All right, let's go to Bob in Florida. Bob, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yes, I agree with the last two wholeheartedly. I'm really upset about this whole thing, this kangaroo court. I wish the Republican Party would absolutely take charge of the Senate. Do not let Nancy Pelosi run both the House and the Senate. We've got control of the Senate. Take control of it, Republicans. Take control of it, senators. That's exactly right. And I think they've abused Congress. These Democrats have. They need to be prosecuted for abuse of Congress. I just can't understand how in the world they've let something like this get by.
All right, Bob. Well, listen, thank you. I appreciate that. And trust me, Mitch McConnell is not going to let Nancy Pelosi anywhere near this thing. This is one of those times where you're actually glad that Mitch McConnell is on your team and on your side. Thanks for the call, Bob. Last call of the hour. Let's go to Chelsea in New Orleans. Chelsea, I need you to keep this as concise as you can. What's on your mind?
Okay, we heard them prepared, but we should turn the tables. We're looking at this the wrong way. We should run with it. How else can we lure these bums to light? Using their speech, no one is above the law. The Bidens, both Joe and Hunter, Mr. Schiff, Nadler, and Pelosi would have to sit on the stand and answer direct questions on how they use their office to persuade an up-and-coming election that is about to turn. And, hey, Donald Trump has been begging to testify about this whole situation since it started, and he does it daily. That's just him. So let's just look at this the right way.
All right, Chelsea, I appreciate the call. Thank you for that. And the interesting thing is that, you could have, I think what Donald Trump would like, originally what he wanted, I think he's changed his tune now. Now he wants a trial, and he wants a quick trial, and he wants it over. So different ways you could go at that thing. But I think the momentum is building, I think, on the Republican side. Let's just vote on this thing. So we're doing it constitutionally right. Let's conduct the trial, and let's get rid of these things with extreme prejudice so they can never be filed again. All right, well, I'm not going to be with you again until right after Christmas. We'll run some special Christmas programming early next week, and then a special replay or two after that. But I want to share some...
Brian,
yes.
Brian, what they've decided to do is run Christmas music on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Okay, so a lot of Christmas music.
Yeah.
And then I'll be back with you. We'll run a special program on Thursday and on Friday. Now, let's... I want to take a look with you at some of the details in the poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. So right away, you know that's not Jeff Reed's house, because they already got mice running all over the place over there. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care. They'd been worn for 2 weeks, and they needed the air. No, that's not actually in there. That's added by later texts. In hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there, the children were nestled all snug in their beds. It's important that you do word studies on important words. Now, this word nestled, this comes from an all-German word that means chocolate. So the word picture is a beautiful, tender picture. These children were snuggled up all chocolatey warm in their beds. While visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. This gives you an idea how old they were. If they were older, other things would be dancing in their heads. Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap, now that's all it says, but there must have been more, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. Now here's where you need to look at ancient manuscripts. Sometimes they can add some insight into the passage you're looking at. There's an ancient textual tradition that reads this verse this way: I tore open the shutters and threw up the hash. Evidently something a little difficult in Christmas dinner. So maybe it was at Jeff's house after all. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. With the little old driver so lively and quick, I skipped that. With the little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen. Now here I want to apply this to modern life. Modern Americans make a huge, they think that the text includes Rudolph. Rudolph was not in this. Rudolph was not among Donder and Blitzen pulling Santa's sleigh on Christmas Eve. On top of the porch to the top of the wall, now dash away all, threw a little soap commercial in there. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. This is when you're glad that they are tiny reindeer, because they're up on the top of your house. And then in the twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof, as I drew in my head was turning around. Down the chimney came St. Nicholas with a bound. Now, I want you to pay very careful attention to the description of Santa Claus, because there are things here that you probably never noticed before. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot. Notice what the text says here. It doesn't say feet. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot. So the first thing you discover about Santa is that he was a one-legged man. His clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot, so he was a dirty old man. A bundle of toys he had flung on his sack, meaning he was playing with toys at his age, so he's senile. He looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. 4 roses, maybe. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. So he's an unshaven, senile, one-legged old man. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth. The smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly, meaning he was sloppy fat, that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. Who wouldn't? A wink of his eye, that's probably not nice, and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, so he's an antisocial dude, but went straight to his work, the only decent thing about Santa in the whole poem, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk. Now here it's important to pay attention to prepositions, because they can illuminate the text. He turned with a jerk. So evidently he had some kind of a helper who wasn't a particularly good guy. Laying his finger aside of his nose, that's probably not nice either, and giving a nod up the chimney, he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Now there's an ellipsis here, according to the best texts of this poem. There's a word that was left out. There's a pronoun that was left out. Happy Christmas to all and to all. There's a gap there in those phrases. The word that is left out and is restored by the best text is Happy Christmas to you all and to you all a good night. So the reality is Santa, my friends, not from the North Pole, he was from the South Pole. All right, the light's dawning in Jeff. I can see it. He's illuminated. He's instructed. He now knows things about Santa that he never knew before. And that happens when you pay careful attention to the text and the pronouns and all that kind of stuff. All right, well, enough of that foolishness. Again, I won't be with you again until after Christmas, so I hope you have a terrific time with your family. Hope you have a terrific time singing Christmas songs, worshiping Christ on Christmas Eve, or Christmas morning for that matter, thanking him for the gift of himself. This is why we give gifts at Christmas. It's in honor, it's in memory, it's in recognition of the ultimate Christmas gift, which is Jesus Christ himself, the Son of God, who came to earth to give us eternal life, the greatest gift that the Father could give us. And this is the time to celebrate that and remember that. That's why we'll be glad to let you listen to Christmas music all day Monday, all day Tuesday, and all day Wednesday. Then we'll be back together on Thursday. All right. Let me send you into your weekend with this blessing from the Word of God. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And ladies and gentlemen, do not forget to stand tall before man, bow low before God, stand in the gap where God has placed you, and never forget, with God's help, we are fighting a winnable war. Merry Christmas. See you on Thursday.
Merry Christmas.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family